So just a few introductory remarks before we get to the actual Haggadah, the actual order that we'll be doing through the night. And that is, first of all, Passover night, the 15th of Nisan, this Wednesday night, is a night that is packed with spiritual energy. If you look in the Kabbalistic writings, and it's brought down by the later commentaries as well, it is like over the top, glorious what's happening on Passover night on a spiritual level. We don't even say, for example, it has halachic ramifications. We don't say the special verses of protection that are customary to say at night to protect yourself before you go to sleep. You don't have to bother saying them because like we're so enveloped by God's holy light that like you don't have to worry about it. In fact, the Zohar writes that during the Seder, while each and every family is having their Seder, Hashem is sitting there in Shemaim, in heaven, and he's watching down on us with all of the angels surrounding him, and they're all in silence and just like awed, and he's saying, look how my kids praise me. And it's just like an unbelievably powerful night. So the energy is rich, it's crunch time, and we really have to step up and perform. It's worth it to inspire ourselves. The Peleoetz writes that to the extent that a person tries to excite himself and get himself into it, he will merit more divine assistance, and it will hopefully go as well as he wants. But I will preface with some advice. On the one hand, we want to set our expectations high. There's a lot to gain here, unbelievable, and we're going to talk about some of what we're trying to do on that night. There is a lot to gain. However, you should expect things to go wrong, regardless of the setting you're in, whether you're on your own or just like a small family group. Inevitably, right, when you have expectations, they're not always met. Wine will spill on your dry clean suit. If there are children at the table, they'll get into a scuffle. The toddler might come out of the cabinet that you locked up and with a bowl of Cheerios to serve herself. These things happen. And you have to be ready to just let go and let it roll off. It's just override, no anger, no frustration. After all, one of the primary things we're trying to drive home on Seder night is Hashem's complete control of every aspect of our life. So what better way to show it than to just let go? Okay, I tried and I'm trying, and okay, Hashem wanted the 2-year-old to come with a bowl of Cheerios. So let's let go and guide it as good as you can, peacefully and happily. It's not, there's going to be a lot to do with engaging children on Seder night. If in your particular Seder there are children, then it's not the time to kind of push them beyond their limits and try to make them grow in a place that's uncomfortable for them. The whole environment should be one of relaxed, easy happiness. They should walk away feeling like, wow, that was a great night. I feel loved and special and happy. So that's the general tone we're trying to set. It's really an impactful evening for ourselves and for everybody around us. We want to be happy and excited and just give it our all, as they say. Okay? Now, another thing is we have to plan. How does the phrase go? Failure to plan is a plan to fail, something like that, right? You have to have a little bit of preliminary work. If it's just you and yourself, if it's just you and your wife, you and your family, as it will be this year, just very small groups on their own, you have to have in mind what you'd like to do. Even if it's your first time or even if you've done it before, go through the Haggadah at least once before. Try to get an idea in your mind what you'd like to say at certain points, what you'd like to emphasize. Is there a story you'd like to say? You don't have to be robotic, but just to make, checkpoints and built-in highlights, songs you sing. If you want to have people participate, at what point and how, try in your mind, not too rigid so you don't have too many expectations, but just a general idea of how you can make this run as good as possible. Okay, so step 1 is planning. It starts, this is definitely a good start. We're going through it tonight a little bit just to get some sense of what's going to be happening. Okay, so now let's get to the Haggadah itself. The book that we use on Seder night is called the Haggadah. Literally means the root, Hagid, is to tell or to explain to somebody, really. If you're trying to say over something personal to somebody else. Also, Gimel Dal means connection. It's a connection between you and the person you're relating the story to. And it's a connection, in this case, between us and our creator, our maker. So what are we trying to do? Okay, let's have goals in mind so that we know what to emphasize and what not. There are certain things that people put a lot of time and energy into, and it's a bit of a shame. For example, we'll see in a moment that there are introductory parts to the Haggadah itself. They're just like a build-up. That are not really the essence of the story. And yet people have all the great divrei Torah and vorts about, why were they sitting in Bnei Brak, and why was it these particular rabbis? All kinds of things that are interesting, but they're not the real crux of the what we're trying to do on that night. So let's just try to take a broad look. What are the things we're trying to achieve on Passover night? Okay, so from a mitzvah standpoint, like what are we obliged to do? There are 5 mitzvahs that we're involved in on Seder night. They are eating matzah. We have a Torah obligation and a mitzvah to eat matzah on Seder night, which we'll do a bunch of times. Then you have the mitzvah of relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, saying over the story of what happened, the servitude and the redemption. Thirdly is the mitzvah of eating maror. Fourth, we have the 4 cups of wine that we drink, or grape juice. And finally is the mitzvah of Hallel. Okay, so the 5 mitzvahs that we will have throughout the night. Again, it's matzah, telling the story, eating maror, the 4 cups of wine, and Hallel, the special songs of praise and Tehillim that we say on Seder night. Okay? Now, the main part really is the telling the story. That's what takes the most time. We have a question on the field. Well done. You're still muted there.
Second. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Could we record this? Because I'd like to send this to my son.
Sure.
Okay with you. So
it is being recorded. You can record it as well. I'm recording it too. I hope to post it on Shul's YouTube, unless something goes horribly wrong, in which case I'll try to.
Permission. It says I have to request permission from you. That's why I'm asking you.
Oh, permission granted, but I don't know how to do it in a technical sense. Let me see.
Okay, so you'll whatever. When you're finished with this, you will send it out, and I will send it to my son in Canada.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay. So that's what, in terms of the mitzvahs that we're trying to do on that night, we have those 5. Now, in terms of the telling of the story, that's the section of the Haggadah that we call Magid, when you actually relate the story. Now, the way that it's described in the Torah is telling it to your child. So it could mean the children at the table. It could mean your spouse. It could mean yourself. We're trying to drive home particular points and themes that are meant to be blazed into our mind, that they should be carried with us the entire year. And it's important to note, even if you're sitting on your own this year, which many, many people will be sitting on their own, there is an experience that one can achieve on Seder night. You remember the story of those rabbis sitting and relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim that we tell about in the Haggadah, right? They knew everything. They knew every detail A to Z before they sat down that night. Yet, there is something special and particularly impactful of doing it on Passover night, while the matzah is in front of you, while you're eating the bitter herbs, with the energy of Passover around. A window opens up temporarily where you can plant something deep into your soul and into your psyche, and it will impact you for the rest of the year. Okay, so what are these messages we're trying to drive home? We have an opportunity to bring something home. What is it? So, first and foremost is the lesson of emunah, faith in Hashem, particularly that Hashem exists. There is a God in the world. He created everything and He controls everything. And He's in charge of every detail of our life. And that's brought out through the story of Mitzrayim. We talk about the slavery, and then we talk about all the miracles and wonders that Hashem did for us, displaying His complete control and His attention to detail, how each plague impacted exactly the way it was supposed to. The frogs didn't step 1 inch into the boundary of the Jews, right? Not one drop of blood got into the Jews' water system, and yet the Egyptians got it all. The very thing that they tortured the Jews with, they were punished with. They made us try to catch wild animals, so they suffer through wild animals, right? Hashem's complete control of nature and His attention to detail and he's involved in every aspect of our life. That's what we're trying to emblazon in our mind on Seder night, Hashem's control and faith in God and what he does. Okay? And that ought to lead to a second point, which is, there's reward and punishment. When you do good, you get good. And when you don't do good, you get not good, right? The Egyptians were punished because they didn't listen to God, right? There's a concept of reward and punishment, perhaps not so popular these days, talking about the concept of punishment. But it is a fact that bad things happen often because a person did bad, right? So reward and punishment is one of the basic tenets of our faith. And finally, thirdly, there is hakarat hatov, gratitude. The climax of Seder night is Hallel, right? After everything is said and done, we lift up our cup and we sing, B'tzet Yisrael Mitzrayim, Hodil Hashem ki tov, ki l'olam chasdo. By the end of the night, we want to just be wrapped up in gratitude and a feeling of complete indebtedness to God. And basically, like, I'm at your service. I love you and I feel loved and I will do anything that you ask of me. That is it. We want to emphasize that Hashem, we have emunah in Hashem. He exists and he's in control of every aspect of our life. There's reward and punishment, and we are so deeply grateful and indebted. And that third point is a main one. Meaning it's one thing to believe in God, but that always comes with some obligation, right? And therefore, I will be at your service. I feel indebted to you and I'll be at your service. Okay, so those are the salient themes that we're trying to pin down this night. And therefore, that will impact the things that we emphasize on Seder night, right? I might be less inclined now to talk about, was Rabbi Elazar 70 years old or was he 18 years old? And why was it this? Those little minutiae, which are interesting, and like the gematrias and like these fun things that you hear, they're pepper, right? They help spice up the evening. But the main point is the basic story. Hashem loves us. Look at what he did for us, and look how he punished our enemies, right? Just going through those themes and driving it home. That's what we want to emphasize. And so when you're going through, hopefully we should have an opportunity before Seder night to sit down, try to pick out a few sections that deal with those themes and try to find a way to embellish them. People often tell a story about other redemptions that happened throughout history, whether it's you could throw in a Holocaust story. And the point is not to remember the Holocaust on this occasion, but rather how Hashem was also there. And you see how what happened in Egypt continued throughout history. And even though things got tough, he was holding our hand throughout the entire time. Right? There's different ways to bring things out. A general piece of advice is do what you're good at and what you feel connected to. If you happen to know lots about the plagues, then talk about that and emphasize that. If you want to talk about how bad it was in Egypt or some nice thing you heard, right? Do more where you feel comfortable, right? Trying to find the place that speaks to you, but also align it with the general goal of the night, which is to bring home emunah, belief in Hashem. And I'll just finish with one last introductory remark before we get into the actual Haggadah, and we'll do basically a play-by-play. And that is, there is an obligation to remember the Exodus every day of our life. We say Shema twice, once in the morning and once at night. And we mention the Exodus. It's a mitzvah. So what's the difference between Seder night when we talk about the Exodus and every other night of the year when we also have to talk about the Exodus? So this is a crucial point and also should aid us in trying to achieve what we ought to. And that is, imagine a father sits down with his son one night and he tells them this long, elaborate story. It takes an hour or more, going into every detail and telling him all the highs and the lows and the turning points and really getting into the nitty-gritty, every detail of the story. Okay? Now, the next night, when the father wants to refer to that story, he doesn't have to unfold it and do the whole thing again. He could just briefly say, remember that story. And 2 weeks later, remember that story. You can always just refer back to that picture that he painted on that first night where he related the story. And that's exactly the goal over here. This is from the Netziv, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda of Berlin. He said that's the difference between Seder night and all other nights of the year when we also remember the Exodus. On Seder night, we are to erect this magnificent thing, this amazing story in 3D, color, details. Put it as much as you can add, make it exciting with all the smoke and fireworks and everything. Let that get branded into our mind, that for the rest of the year, when we're saying Shema and we say, Asher Tzeisi Eschem Eretz Mitzrayim, I took you out of Egypt, we'll click back to Seder night and remember that experience that we felt. Okay, we're trying to create this model that we can refer back to the entire year. So now is the time to give it our all. Even if you're not a wonderful orator, get your fancy showmanship on as best as you could. Okay, and Chazal made it easier for us. They assisted us. We use props. There's the matzah. There's the mar. You're tasting it, right? And in every family, there are different customs. Sometimes, some people, I think they have a custom. They put the matzahs on their back, and they walk around. This is how our parents left Egypt. In my family, we grew up that before Shulchan Orech, when you start the meal, the children would go into the other room. They would dress up like Egyptian Jews and like perform the Exodus in the hallway. Some people have all kinds of silly things, beating each other with leeks, different things like that. The idea is to make it a full experience with all of your senses. Get your imagination involved. You feel happy, light, silly, right? We learn best and things go in best when the environment is light and happy and free. Okay, so use props if needed. Don't hide behind the props, right? But use them. For example, there are picture books, wonderful picture books that you may have access to, depicting all the plagues. So it shouldn't be like people are tucked away in the corner just flipping through the pages, but like you can bring it out and look, this was the plague of the frogs, and it's part of your presentation. Whether you're in charge of the Seder or just an attendee, but make it a part of the experience rather than just hiding behind. Okay, so those are the introductory remarks. So what did I say so far? Just very plainly, first of all, the potential is enormous on Passover night. Utilize it. Point number 2 was, with that in mind, be expecting things to go wrong, and just roll with it. Go take it easy. It's meant to be happy, and what better way to show that Hashem is in control than to just not get frustrated when things don't go your way, right? Ultimately, it's God. He controls the Egyptians, and he also controls the Cheerios on the floor after you cleaned your house for 3 weeks. And the wine on your suit. You will definitely spill wine on your suit. It might be one of the mitzvahs as well, so don't worry about that. And the third thing we said was you have to have a plan. Sit down beforehand, try to maybe even literally put notes in the margins of your Haggadah that you'll be using. Try to, where am I going to involve people? What will I say when? More or less, a loose outline. Try to get yourself excited. And the themes that we're trying to bring home are emunah, belief in Hashem and his control, belief in reward and punishment, and to be wrapped up in gratitude. And I'm at your service, Hashem. Okay. So now let's get into the actual Haggadah. I will try to open up a version of the Haggadah here in front of me. If you have one too, that would be helpful, but it's not compulsory. You don't have to do that. Oh, I thought I had one. Just a moment, I'm sorry. Okay, so we have Kadesh. We begin with Kadesh. So Kadesh is Kiddush. We literally make Kiddush, right? So the custom is to stand or to sit, usually to stand, I believe. You make Kiddush. So let's talk about it. This is the first of our 4 cups of wine. Unlike on Shabbat, when only the person in charge has the cup, here everyone at the Seder should have their own cup. In terms of the technical nitty-gritty, how much are you supposed to drink? How big should your cup be? So the minimum, what you are obligated to have is a cup that can contain 3 ounces, which is really not so much. 3-ounce cup. Okay? And then there's just basic levels of maximal religious compliance and down. The ideal is to drink the whole cup each time. If you can't do that, drink the majority of the cup. If you can't do that, just drink 3 ounces. And if that's too much, just drink the majority of 3 ounces. Okay, 1.6 ounces. That's basically it. So bottom line is you just have to drink the majority of a revi'it, which is 3 ounces, fluid ounces, or most of the cup or the whole cup. Okay, that's what it goes. What do you have to drink? So wine, if you can handle it, but to drink 4 cups of wine, you might ruin all the other mitzvahs you have to do. You'll be drunk or asleep or just not feeling well. So some people use grape juice. You can mix the two together. Whatever works for you. Try to drink something that you enjoy. You're trying to feel a feeling of freedom. And on that note, the custom is that you should try to not pour your own cup, but rather have somebody else pour it for you. And you for them, also symbolizing the royalty. That's not an obligation. So like if nobody's around or their hands are full, whatever, you can pour it for yourself. But it's a nice thing to try to do, to have other people pour it for you. Okay, and then you make Kiddush, as it says in the Haggadah. I should say, before you even begin the Seder, there's that song, that poem, with every step of the Seder. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, right? So the custom is, we sing it. This is a very old poem and a very old custom. Certainly at the beginning of the whole process, you should sing the whole poem. Kadesh, Urchatz. And then when you get to each step, some people sing the whole thing again. At least say where you're holding, okay? Like we're at Kadesh now. Now we're going to do Urchatz. Now we're going to do Karpas. One of the ideas is that, first of all, it helps you remember where you're holding. Also, it's another sign of freedom. A slave, he can't make his own order of how the night's going to go. He's just at the whim of his master. His master says, go fetch me some dinner, go there, go here. He's not in control of his night. By emphasizing the structure of the night, we're showing I'm free. I've decided that this is what the night's going to look like, and that's how it's going to go. It's another expression of our freedom, which we are celebrating on Passover night. Okay, so you make Kadesh. We spoke about how much you should drink. And now remember, when you drink, you should lean to your left. I don't know how it looks on your camera. It could be I'm looking to the right now. Okay, but you lean to your left. Now this is important to remember. A technical point. No, you don't lean in midair. It doesn't feel very free. It's not a pleasant experience. You have to lean on something so that should be comfortable. So you could like turn sideways and lean on your chair to the left. Okay, you can lean on the table beside you, lean on the lap of the person next to you. You should have something that you're actually physically putting your weight on, rather than just suspending yourself in midair. Okay? You don't have to get out of hand. You don't have to be laying flat. Just a general lean. Okay? And again, that's an expression of our freedom. Throughout the night, we'll be doing things that seem contradictory. On the one hand, we'll be dipping things in bitter herbs to remember the slavery. On the other hand, we'll be doing things that remember the freedom. But the basic idea is we're trying to relive the whole experience. And if you appreciate the downs, then you will all the more so appreciate the highs. Right? It's just really getting into the experience. Another prop that we were given to make it more impactful. Okay, the next step is Urchatz. Urchatz is are we together? Are there any questions so far before moving forward? Okay, so we'll move forward. Urchatz means we wash our hands. Okay, very appropriate this time of year. You don't have to use hand sanitizer. You just have to wash your hands as if you would wash for bread. 2 times on the right, 2 times on the left, or some do 3 and 3. We don't make a blessing. And however, even though you don't make a blessing, you should try not to talk. Just like before you eat bread after washing, you resort to the So you should try to keep that up also in this case, although it's not as severe. Now, why are we washing our hands? So the answer is because we're about to dip a vegetable in liquid. And throughout the year, whenever you dip a vegetable in liquid, the truth is you ought to try and wash your hands beforehand. Okay, so you're washing like you wash for bread 3 times. That's Urchatz. And then comes Karpas. Karpas is the next step in the poem. Karpas literally means celery or parsley. It doesn't have to be either of those two. People have different customs. Many use a potato. Some use a radish. It has to be some vegetable whose blessing is Borei Pri Ha'adama. Okay? Some vegetable. It could be a carrot even, right? There is, the word karpas itself has some symbolism to it. Shishim, parech, there's all kinds of different ramazim you'll find in the footnotes of your Haggadah. So there is maybe an Indian, a nice thing to use celery or parsley, but it depends on your custom and what's available. Okay, so you take the vegetable and you dip it in salt water. So in this case, when you eat it, you make borei pri ha'adama, and have in mind that borei pri ha'adama is going to cover the maror you're going to be eating later in the night. Okay. In this case, most people do not lean when they eat the karpas. Since you're dipping it in the bitter water, you're remembering something bitter, so you're not going to simultaneously lean and remember the freedom. It will be a contradiction. Okay, so you eat the karpas, no leaning. The amount you should eat is not a lot, very, very little. In fact, the size of your finger, something like that, just some small amount. Some people say you should not eat, you should avoid eating a lot. So otherwise, I'll get into questions of whether you have to make an after bracha. You don't. Okay, so that's karpas. You take any vegetable, dip it in the salt water, and eat it. Okay. And moving forward, what's next is yachatz. Yachatz, you've had your Seder plate set up in front of you. I didn't describe how to set up the Seder plate. That you could find in any book, the Haggadah you'll be using. There are also different ways to do it. If you have a custom, great. If not, just follow the book. So you have these 3 matzahs in front of you. You take the middle matzah and break it in half. The reason we're doing this, that's what yachatz means, you split it, right? The reason you're doing it is because you're about to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The next thing that happens is Magid. And you should be telling the story in front of a broken piece of matzah, the bread of affliction. Like it's a prop for the story. This is the bread that we ate while we were in Egypt. We ate like a broken piece of matzah. We were so disinterested in life, we didn't even have time or bother for our food to taste good. This is what we ate. It's like a part of reliving the experience. So you're going to break the matzah in half, save the bigger piece for afikoman. Don't have to take out a ruler or whatever. Whatever looks bigger, just put it aside for afikoman. And then leave the matzah uncovered as you're about to tell the story of the Exodus. Okay, so we had kadesh, ruchatz, karpas, yachatz. We just broke our matzah and left it uncovered on the table. And now Magid. Magid is the recounting of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. So what we should do now is fill up the second cup of wine or grape juice, whatever you're drinking. Everybody should fill up their cups. We're not going to drink it now. We're going to drink it at the very end of the story. There are different reasons why we fill it up. Some is just to get the kids to ask questions. Oh, by the way, if you do have children at your Seder, I would heavily recommend using bribes. Okay, we in our family we have just a bowl of chocolate chips. Even just a symbolic treat, like a little chocolate chip. Every time they ask a question or sing along or something, just to keep them involved and engaged. Right, they are the main players here. And as we're about to enter Magid, which could be infinitely long, you have to keep in mind that it's a delicate balancing act. You, on the one hand, want to do a great job telling over the story. On the other hand, you've got to keep those kids awake for the matzah. Okay, so you want it to be exciting and fun, but do a good job, but you don't want to make it too long because people will start, getting bored. And if the kids, run off and start playing in the basement, then it's all over, right? So you want to keep them engaged. Try to find that balance. Singing, short stories. It's a time to learn how to be a quick, impactful speaker. So now we enter Magid. Okay, so we won't go into the details of the Magid, of what each thing means. That you can look into the Haggadah, or we've done other classes on that. But just a general overview of the structure of Magid, it helps figure out what exactly is going on. The first thing we say is Ha Lachma Anya. It's an introductory piece. This is the bread. We say it's basically an invitation for people to come and eat. We announce that this is the matzah that our family ate in Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's like an introductory remark. And then we sing the Manishtana, which is like the highlight. The custom is that the youngest person at the table does it. If it's just adults, then you can all sing it. You can sing it to yourself. It's bringing out the questions just to get you in the mood. These are 4 questions that recall different parts of the Seder, different themes, slavery on the one hand, suffering on the other. You're just kind of like whetting your appetite and getting yourself inspired as you're about to begin unfolding the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Now, what happens next is there is a whole set of introductions. And don't confuse them with the main part of the story. As we noted already, a lot of people, since it's the beginning, there's a lot of like great energy and you just want to spend all day in the beginning of the Haggadah. But you have to pace yourself. It's like running a marathon, right? You can't give it all in the beginning because then you're going to just get exhausted and rush through some of the main parts at the end. So there are always questions people like to ask and different things they share every year, and that's okay, right? Make room for everybody's, like additions, but you have to be a good conductor to pace it properly. So be aware of the fact that the several paragraphs in the beginning are completely introductory. For example, here I'm going into my Haggadah over here. We first establish that there is an obligation to tell over the story of the Exodus. We say in short, Avadim Hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim, Avadim Hayinu, right? Definitely sing it. Of course, sing every song you can. What are we doing over there? That is the whole night in a nutshell. We were slaves to Paro and Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out. And that's why we have to tell this whole story. It's basically introduction. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. We were slaves, Hashem took us out, and therefore we have an obligation to tell over the story. So here comes a bunch of introductory remarks. You have to tell the story even if you're wise. And when do you have to tell the story? And the Torah designs 4 different ways of telling the story for 4 different sons. Right? Many paragraphs in the beginning just dealing with introductory remarks. So let me mention them again. We talk about who's obligated, even if we're all wise, even if we all know everything. And we tell the story of rabbis who were sitting in Bnei Brak and they told the whole story all night. Who needs to be taught? There are 4 sons. When are we obliged? You might think it's from Rosh Chodesh. It really should be on the day of Passover. There's all these pieces in the beginning of Magid, which are totally introductory, just describing the parameters of the mitzvah. Okay, I'm emphasizing this point to show you that that's not the main story. Okay, so we talk about the 4 sons. People have all kinds of great things about the 4 sons. Share them if you'd like. But the main point of the night is to talk about the actual Exodus. Okay, so where does the story actually begin? Mitchila ovdei avodah zara hayu avoteinu. Okay, if you happen to have Haggadah in front of you, those words. In the beginning, our forefathers were idol worshippers. We're now settling into the story. We're starting, and look how bad things used to be. And then Hashem took and chose Avraham, and his son Yaakov, or his grandson Yaakov, went into Egypt. And then we start describing line by line the whole Exodus. Okay, we talk about the promise he made to Abraham. Right now we're slowly easing into the story. So this is where it's going to take, it could get a little bit long, certainly if you have kids at the table, and even just adults, you can read it, you can go around reading it, but take note of the fact that it might take a little bit too long if there are little kids at the table. So maybe just assign certain parts to people who are willing to read. Again, we said don't put people on the spot, only make everybody feel comfortable and happy, right? But you have to basically have a game plan for this section. When the whole story is unfolding, it can get pretty detailed. You want to focus and bring it alive. So insert some stories, some highlights, a song, a nice Dvar Torah you found in the footnotes, whatever it is. Try to put 1 or 2 in throughout the story. Okay, and it's worthwhile just to read through it beforehand so you have some idea of how it goes. We get to finally you have a question here? We all together? Just a moment. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Is anybody there? Can you hear me? Is anybody there? Yes? Okay.
We can hear you.
Great. Now, when we get to the 10 plagues, there are different customs, but as you list off each plague, you say dam, tzfardea, kinim, right? So different customs, all relating to taking out some wine from your cup. At least the person in charge of the Seder does this. Some people, even the other participants, do it. You take a finger and dip it in your cup and then like put it on your napkin or your pinky. Or some in my house, my father would pour out a drop of wine until the cup was empty by the end, right? You'll take out a drop for each of the 10 plagues. That's 10 times. And then again, we say the mnemonic, Detzach Hadash Be'achav, right? The acronym to remember. So for each one of those, you also take out a drop. And then finally, we say Dam Esh V'Timrot Hashan, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. And you also take out wine over there. So there, just be aware of that custom to take out wine from your cup. There are different reasons given for it, just to make this a little bit more insightful. One is the Gaon of Vilna explains like each plague was like a layer off of the Egyptians' defense system. Internal defenses, external defenses, whatever, right? One layer down, 2 layers down, 3 layers down. On the contrary, there's another explanation in that at the end of the day, we're wasting wine on this. Grape juice or wine, a bottle of grape juice is $5.99 a bottle, and not so cheap, right? So it makes us a little bit heavy-hearted. I'm losing a whole cup of wine, or maybe even just a bunch of drops. And that is that ultimately these are Hashem's creations that were suffering. It was their own fault. But we show a little bit of remorse, interestingly, about the death of Hashem's creations. That like halvai, would it be that they would have learned the good way instead of having to take the hard way? An interesting mix of ideas there. There are all kinds of fascinating things to say about the 10 plagues, and I would encourage you to look into it. Okay. Then after we relate the whole story, we say the 10 plagues. Then there's a section of Rabban Gamliel Haya Omer. And this is like another one of the highlights of the Seder. Anybody who didn't say these 3 things did not fulfill his obligation, right? That's the quote from the Haggadah. At the end of the whole story, after the 10 plagues and everything, we finished with this. Pesach, Matzah, Umaror. The Paschal sacrifice, the Matzah, and the Maror. And then we go into explaining what each one of those things are. So what's the idea? We already just told the whole story. And now we're like kind of doing another recap. So the idea is, now that the story is fresh in your mind, we just went through everything, we did all the singing, we did the thing. Now, like, I want you to experience it. It's one thing to talk about it, but seeing is believing. Look, this is the sacrifice, or this represents the sacrifice that we were meant to bring. And this matzah is what we were eating when we left Egypt, because it went so quickly. And this is the maror that we ate, because this is the bitterness that we felt, right? We're bringing it, now that it's all in our minds, we're bringing it inside of us through the physical experience, seeing and touching and tasting, which we will be doing in a moment, eating it. Finally, after relating the whole story and going through those points of the props that we're giving, so to speak, now we climax in Hallel. I forgot to mention, we climax first of all in basically in Thanksgiving. Before the technical Hallel, we have Dayenu. Ilu Hatzianu, right? Dayenu. That whole song is how grateful we are to Hashem. We enumerate a whole ladder, a 15-step ladder of all the great things that Hashem did for us. And we're just like, it would have been sufficient if he just gave us one of those 15, and then he gave us another one, and that would have been enough for us to be like totally indebted to him. That's where we're supposed to be holding at the end of the Maggid experience, like this excited, like I'm so happy to say thank you to you, God, right? We're supposed to be building up and climbing to this pinnacle of indebtedness and gratitude and happiness and joy. So we sing Dayenu. Now, some people are inclined, and many Haggadahs are filled with interesting words, Divrei Torah, about Dayenu. What do you mean? It's enough that he brought us to Har Sinai and didn't give us the Torah. Right? You can get lost in all the nitty gritty. You could share those Divrei Torah if you wish, of course, but the main point is the gratitude that we're singing about. All right? So don't lose the sight of the ball here. We're supposed to be wrapped up in gratitude. That's what the song is about, and that's the continuation to the next phase of the Seder, which is the first half of Hallel. Right? The end of Magid is the first half of Hallel. At this point, we lift up our cups. We say Lefichach, therefore, we are obligated to praise you, and we start singing the first section of the Hallel. Now, Hallel is split into two, with the meal and the eating in between. So this is the first section. We'll make a bracha at the end, and then continue it later. Okay, so Hallel, you could say it like you say it in shul. For example, one person can be the chazan, that he says, like one stanza. Whenever there's a responsive part in shul, you could do it that way at your table, or you could all do it together, or take turns and just have in mind to fulfill it with the other person saying it. Right? There are different ways to do it. But it's not like you have to read along every single word. For example, in the parts where we say responsibly, when there's like the Ki Le'olam Chasdo, Hodu L'Hashem Ki Tov, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. So there you could do it like you do it in shul, right? The chazan says the first half, and then the participants respond, etc. Okay, and then after that we drink our second cup of wine. The custom amongst Ashkenazim is to make a bracha on the second cup as well. So if we finish the Hallel, we make Bar Priya Geffen. This is all in the Haggadah. We're just going over it, right? Again, we said 3-ounce cup. Just drink a majority of it. You lean. Remember to lean. If a man forgot to lean, then he should drink again. Drink another cup of grape juice. And if a woman forgot, then she doesn't have to drink it again, but she could if she wants. She's just as obligated as a man, but when it comes to the leaning, there's a whole halachic dispute. So she doesn't have to do it again. Okay, so now we get to rachza. We wash our hands again. I'm sure you've seen the famous joke of the year that this year's Seder will sound like this: Kadesh urchatz, karpas urchatz, magid urchatz. Right? You wash your hands every other step because of the terrible situation we're in. If you haven't heard the joke, I hope you enjoyed that. But I feel like I was obligated to share that with you. So now we do rachza. The second time we wash our hands. Mommy, I see you enjoyed that. Thank you. The second time we wash our hands. This time we're washing because we're going to eat the matzah now. So we wash for bread. You do make the blessing. Okay. After you wash, again, you try to keep silent until you eat the matzah. And now comes time for motzi matzah. Motzi matzah, you have to be a little bit, what do you call it? Have some dexterity, exactly. You pick up all 3 matzahs, okay? You make Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lechem Mina Aretz. That's the first blessing. Now, you lower the third bottom matzah, and now all you have in your hand is the top matzah, which is still complete, and the broken piece underneath it. On those 2, you say, Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav Yitzvanu Al Achilat Matzah. You make the second blessing of eating matzah. Okay, so again, the reason here is when we make hamotzi, you want to have 2 complete matzahs in your hand, just like we do every Shabbat and every Yom Tov. We have 2 complete matzahs to remember the man that we received in the desert, which came double on the eve of a Yom Tov or Shabbat. Okay, so since one of our matzahs is broken, we take that third one together. This is the general custom. If you have a different custom, then you already know what you do. Okay, but this is the general custom. You pick up all 3 matzahs, you make hamotzi, then you drop the bottom matzah. You don't have to drop it, whatever, place it down, and you have the full matzah on top and the half matzah, and you make a Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav Yitzvanu Al Achilat Matzah. And then you eat the matzah. Okay, so obviously, most times it's not going to be, depending on the size of your family is the truth, or the amount of people at your table, there may not be enough matzah in your hands to feed everyone at the table. So that's okay. Don't panic. That's all right. The main thing is everyone should get a little piece of the top matzah that you made the blessing on, because you want to be connected to the mitzvah that you made the blessing on. So everybody gets a little piece of the top matzah, and then all they need is a kazait of other matzah. On Seder night we use shmura matzah. Usually it's the round hand matzahs, right? So how much is a kazait? How much do you have to eat? So from those round matzahs, which is what most people use on Seder night, and from those round matzahs, if you eat about a quarter, then you're already in good shape. You've gotten all you need. Even a fifth is okay. Okay? Even a fifth is okay. Some have the custom, it's ideal for the person who made the blessing to eat a kazait from the top one and a kazait from the broken one. So there you can rely on the smaller measurement, of course, and just have 2/5, or even a little bit less than that, right? There are varying shitas. But a bare minimum is 1/5 of a hand matzah, more or less. A quarter, if you're going to have just one kazai, try to have a quarter of a matzah. It's not so much, like a piece of slice. And that's what you eat. Okay, are we together so far? Anybody out there? Any questions?
When you were talking about taking from the top matzah and the middle matzah, you were saying kazais from each? You mean a kazais in total?
What? So the one who's leading the Seder, ideally should eat a kazait from each.
Oh, so he's eating two kazais
Yes.
at that point.
He's eating two kazais, but he can, since he's eating two, he can rely on the smaller measurement of a kazait, which would be a fifth or even a sixth of a hand matzah, right? So ultimately, he just has to eat a little bit more than everyone else, and it'll be considered two kazait, right?
Okay.
Small kazait.
That makes sense.
Okay. Anybody else so far? So we just ate our matzahs. Eat them again. You have to eat them when you're leaning. We said not leaning in midair, but leaning here. If you want to get technical, you have maximum up to 9 minutes to eat all of that. It's plenty of time. 4 minutes if you want to be. If you want to get MRC, MRC. It's a good phrase to know. MRC is maximal religious compliance, right? You want to get all of the opinions. So you have 4 minutes, but otherwise 6 minutes, 9 minutes, you'll be okay. It's not going to take you that long. Okay, so everyone eats one kazait of matzah. We said it's like a quarter or a fifth of a matzah, and they do it while they're leaning. And the next thing we have is maror. Whoops, my Haggadah got lost here. There we are. Okay, maror is the next step. You can, again, sing the song if you'd like. Just remind yourself you're holding by maror now. Maror literally means bitter herb. And it's to remember the bitterness of the slavery. Again, it's driving home the message in the story with the experience. So everyone again does this, not just the one leading the Seder. Everyone takes a piece of maror and dips it in the charoset. So what is maror? Maror could be a number of different things. Some people use romaine lettuce. Others use horseradish. Could be endives as well. I think those are the three common ones. If you use a different one, speak up. There are 2 other options, but they're not as common. Idea, it should be one of these bitter vegetables. Romaine lettuce, make sure you get one that's free from bugs. They sell them, the star K on them in this area or other hechsherim in other areas. Horseradish, I think that's the custom amongst Ashkenazim, a lot of them. Just have to be careful because you want to eat a kazayit of this, which is like a golf ball's amount, and it could be detrimental to your health. Not a joke to eat that much horseradish. One of my fond memories is watching my brother-in-law, who's an Ashkenazi, eat horseradish, but it's not recommended for those who are not able to handle it. Okay, so if you want to have like a little bit of horseradish on your romaine lettuce, it's okay to mix them. It combines. And again, you want to have a kazait, which to put it in grams, like about 18 grams, not a little bit, about that much. If you compact it, it should be like a little more than a golf ball. Not so much. You eat a kazait, and you dip it in the charoset. So the charoset, again, there's different customs how to make it. Generally, the custom amongst Ashkenazim is to make it out of apples and red wine. Those are the two main components. Some people add in dates and nuts and other things like that.
Walnuts.
In the store, you can make it yourself. What else?
Walnuts, very common.
Walnuts,
Mm-hmm.
almonds. The truth is that on the one hand, what is the charoset all about? It's to remember the bricks and the mortar that we were working with. Again, remembering the servitude. Also, the other things that we mix into it. So that's like the wine is the blood, and the other things that we mix into it is things that allude to the Jewish people or to the redemption. So in the song Shir Shirim, there are a lot of different comparisons between the Jewish people and different types of food and nuts. And shkedim, for example, almonds. Some people make their charos with almonds because Hashem is shoked. He is like waiting anxiously to bring about the redemption, etc., etc. Right? All these little things that we do, which might seem insignificant, have lots of meaning beneath them. I won't go through it all now because I don't know it all, but it's all in the books. And also, we don't have the time for that. So you dip it in the charoset. You don't like layer it on. You want to taste the bitterness a little bit and also taste the charoset. Okay? So that is maror. I should note, by the way, so we have the Seder plate on the table at the whole time, right? Throughout the night, you're going to be taking things from the Seder plate to use. The maror, the charoset, etc. Once you use something, so it can come off the plate. However, it's best if you can keep the plate intact with all the ingredients throughout the entire night. So for example, after you eat karpas, that vegetable in the beginning, so you take off potatoes from the Seder plate, but you leave some potato on the plate. Take off the maror, take off the romaine lettuce from the Seder plate, leave some on the plate. Okay, there should always be the plate that's intact. You can use what's on it, but just leave some on the Seder plate. Kabbalistically, that's what the Mishnah Berurah and others bring down, that you should try to have everything on the plate throughout the entire night. Okay? So that is the end of maror. We don't eat it leaning, again, because we're remembering the bitterness of the slavery, so there's no need to lean, because that would be a contradiction. Next is korech. Korech literally means a wrap. Believe it or not, matzahs used to be soft. In some societies, they still are soft. And they literally used to wrap the matzah around the maror and the charoset, and they would eat it all together. These days, we don't have soft matzahs, but nevertheless, we make like a sandwich. So again, you take a kazayit of matzah, quarter or a fifth of a hand matzah, and you make a sandwich with that and maror and charoset. Okay? And again, you recline and you eat it. In some agadas, most agadas, there's something printed here that Hillel, this is a remembrance of Hillel, who would wrap it all up together and eat it at once. And this, one of the things this is symbolic of is, once again, at the same time that I'm experiencing the bitterness, which is the maror, I'm experiencing the redemption of the matzah. That now, at this point in the evening, after we've been through the whole story, and we've already, our hearts are filled with praise and joy, we can now appreciate that those bitter things in life are inevitably leading to a redemption. They are in and of themselves a window to Geula and greater things. It's easier said than done, obviously, but these are the lofty levels that we're striving for on Seder night, appreciating everything that comes from God and wrapping it all up in like a loving mitzvah sandwich and eating it. Like, I'm here with you, God. I appreciate that everything is from you, the good and the bad, and really nothing is bad. It's all just an opportunity to come closer to you. That's some of the underlying symbolism of Korech. Okay? But I don't want to make this interesting. We're just trying to go through the technical Seder. Any questions so far? Okay. Forging forth. This might all be self-explanatory. A lot of it is in the Haggadah, but just to give you a basic, a run-through to get ourselves in the mode. If you have any questions, feel free to speak up. Now we have Shulchan Orech. Any questions? Oh, why did matzah change from soft to crisp? So that was somebody's question. So as a Sephardi, I can blame it on the Ashkenazim, that we lost the art of making matzahs with a lot of care. Basically, it boils down to a concern that it will turn into chametz. As long as it's flat and holes and crispy, there's very little concern that it what do you call it, fermented or that it turns into chametz. So that's why we like to keep it flat, just to keep ourselves safe from any suspicion. In fact, we even check our matzahs that we have these days to see if there are any like pockets or bubbles, because we're concerned that there's some unbaked dough over there that is still rising or will rise upon contact with water. So that's why they no longer have soft matzahs in our cultures. They keep them crisp, and it's an old custom, talking about hundreds of years old, to bake flat, crispy matzahs. In the Beit HaMikdash, unbeknownst to many, the lechem apanim, the showbread that they would have there from week to week, so it was kosher lePesach. It was not chametz, and guess how thick it was? It was a tefach thick. A tefach is about that thick, the size of your fist. What is that, like a good 2.5 inches, 3 inches? That's how thick their matzah was. Can you imagine? But we've lost the art, and we like to be cautious not to have any contact with chametz, right? We just spent our whole month cleaning out the house as good as we can, so we're not going to take any chances of what we put in our mouth. That is the long answer to your question. Okay. Now we enter Shulchan Orech. We set the table. On Passover night, we should use our best dishes that are available. This year, might be more practical to use plastics, depending on various factors relating to quarantine and things like that, no cleaning help, etc. So it shouldn't come at the cost of your sanity, but try to make it a fancy table. Even if you're not going to use it, you should have like your fine china in view. Nice teacups that you're not going to drink tea from, even just have them out, gold vessels, whatever. Try to make it fancy and just a feeling of royalty and regalness, and like here we're sitting with God at our table. Remember now, oftentimes you get like, okay, food's here, let's get eating. But remember, we're still in the middle of this ladder, Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, right? And Shulchan Aruch is part of the ladder. That the meal is a part of the experience. Like suddenly, like we're in the middle of Hallel, and we're stopping to eat. We're showing that like we're appreciating the experience of freedom. So try to, you don't have to be a dictator at the table, but try to keep it, like a holy, warm atmosphere. Certainly no talking bad about anyone. Singing songs, sharing nice stories. Now is the time to share all those things that you wanted to share during Magid, but you didn't want to make it too long. Now there's food on the table, you can talk as long as you want, right? The kids already ate the matzah, they can go to sleep, pass out on the couch, right? Now go on with your stories, you can read out of your books, enjoy each other. It doesn't have to all be about Corona. We talk about it day and night. We're not going to lose anything from not talking about Corona for a few minutes, unless it's to bring out like the greatness of God through Corona or whatever, but just enjoy it. Talk about what your grandfather did. Now is the time to make it a great meal. Demonstrate your joy for what Hashem has done for us. Okay, that is Shulchan Aruch. You don't have to lean while you're eating. Some people lean, but there's no need to lean. Just enjoy your meal. Don't get too full, because at the end there's going to be afikoman. Now, if you ask a child what Pesach is about, the first thing they'll say is afikoman. Afikoman, right? That's the highlight. Why? Because in many families there are varying customs that involve children with afikoman. Sometimes the children steal it, right? You set aside that bigger piece of matzah way back at the beginning of the Seder. You set it aside. So in some families, the children will know if this is your custom. They steal the matzah and they hide it, and then like there's a whole negotiation process to get it back from them so you can finish the meal. In my family growing up, my father would hide the afikoman and we had to go look for it. The varying customs, the basic idea is just get the kids involved throughout the night. So even if it involves them stealing the afikoman while you're telling over a story, they're excited, they're engaged, they just want to be a part of this thing that's happened. And of course that means it's a wonderful time to start pouring in the good stuff, talk to them about Hashem, and our lives have meaning and purpose, right? Why do we want the kids involved? Because now is the time to transmit the most important things in life, why we're alive. Okay, so at the end of the meal, eat a good meal, but don't be too full, because you have to eat afikoman. Afikoman, you take out that big matzah that you saved, and everybody should have a kazayit. If there's not enough in the afikoman, so give them a small piece once again, and just eat the rest from a different matzah. If for some reason a person can't handle that much matzah anymore, they can't eat another quarter matzah or another fifth of a matzah, just even a fairly small square, like the size of 4 almonds, pretty small, that's like bottom line, that's all they'll have to eat. Okay, just so pace yourselves while you're eating. Eat the afikoman. Like a small piece would be enough if a person can't handle a kazayit. Obviously, ideally, you should eat a kazayit again, which is again a quarter matzah or a fifth of a matzah. That is tzafun. Again, you eat it while you're leaning now, because we're back in the Seder. What's next is barech. Barech means birkat hamazon. We do benching. You pour the 3rd cup of wine. Your cup is probably dirty by now from the eating whatever, so wash it off, rinse it off. You're about to do another mitzvah with it. You fill up your cup, and you say birkat hamazon over your cup. Just like when you said kiddush, you were holding your cup. Now when you say birkat hamazon, Baruch atah Hashem, right? You could sing it like you usually do. You're doing it while you're holding your cup. This is the 3rd of the 4 cups of wine. We had 1 for kiddush, 1 which we sang the Hallel over and drank at the end of Magid, and this is the 3rd on birkat hamazon. Okay, you fill up your cup. You bench, remember Ya'aleh v'yavo. Then you lean and drink once again 3 ounces of wine, and the majority of 3 ounces, and then you lean when you drink that again. And then we pour a 4th cup and conclude with Hallel. Hallel is the 2nd half of Hallel, which we left out, right? We wanted to sandwich our meal in praise. We started Hallel. We started eating all the matzah and stuff, which is an expression of our joy and gratitude as well. And now we're finishing off with the Hallel. And we should be like even higher, right? This is what, just look at the design they had in mind for us. Look at the lofty level they were holding us to. Whether we're going to achieve it or not, it's like unbelievable to see what we ought to be capable of. We've been climbing the whole night. We said Hallel, which is like a ladder to get us to the matzah and the maror and then the meal. And then we're like so excited, and we bench, and I got to fill up my cup again and say Hallel now, the rest of the Hallel. Like it's just like this amazing ladder into inspiration in heaven. Okay, whether it's achievable or not, we'll see. We'll try our best, and Hashem will give us assistance. Okay, so after benching, we fill up our 4th cup, which we're about to say Hallel on. However, now there's a little phrase we say. The custom is you go and open the front door, or some door to your house, an entry into your house. Okay, you open up the door. And so why do we open up the door? So there are 2 reasons. One is to show our complete confidence. On this night, we don't need any physical protection. We don't need our own means to protect ourselves. Hashem is protecting us. Look how he protected us during the Exodus, and now he's protecting us from all the evils of this world. We open our door like, here I am. I'm in Hashem's hands. I still feel encased in Hashem's goodness. Secondly, we are letting Eliyahu Hanavi in through our door. He doesn't need the door to enter, being that he's an angel. But Eliyahu Hanavi, it is said, he comes to every Seder. So at this point, we open up the door, and somebody pours an extra cup of wine. Usually it's done at this point. Some people do it at different parts. You fill up an extra cup for Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu's cup. And you just place it on the table, and you leave it like that. Okay? You open the door and you say, Shfoch amatcha al hagoyim, pour your wrath on the nations who don't believe in you. Basically, it's like an impassioned prayer for the redemption to come. Hashem, reveal your glory. Get rid of all the bad guys. We're like sick of all this disease and all these awful things. Hashem, just bring Eliyahu Hanavi, who is supposed to lead to the redemption. Okay, we're holding at a point where we just want Mashiach to come at this point. We just want the purpose of the world to be fulfilled. That's what's happening. We open our door, we feel secure in Hashem's love, and we're letting in Eliyahu Hanavi to come to bring us the redemption. Okay, you fill up that fourth cup. And then you say Shvo Chamatcha. Okay, now we're going to begin the Hallel. You can close the door now. After you say that little paragraph, Shvo Chamatcha ala goyim, pour your wrath upon the nations. And now you're about to begin the Hallel, which starts with the phrase Lo lanu Hashem lo lanu, ki l'shimcha ten kavod. That's just where we're holding in the Hallel. We have the fourth cup in our hands. Try to hold it the whole time. Your arm could get a little bit tired, especially this late at night. Good advice, just practical. You can lean it on the table, and while keeping it elevated. If you want to have MRC, maximal religious compliance, so you can lean your arm like that. It's fine. At least you should pick up the cup at the very end when you make the final blessing. Okay, so you say the Hallel, sing it, get excited about it, get your kids involved. Try not to interrupt with speaking at this point, because you're in the middle. It's like, imagine you're in shul saying Hallel. Just try to go through it. Unless you want to stop and reflect on something in the Hallel, that's okay. It's part of the praise. But no Corona talk, basically. We finish the Hallel, and there's more paragraphs of praise. We say Hodul Hashem Ki Tov. We say Nishmas Kol Chai. Again, praises of God. And we finally finish off with one form or another of a blessing. There are different texts and different Haggadahs. Okay, we finish off holding the cup, and then we lean and drink the fourth cup. After you drink your fourth cup, we make an after blessing, which we always do whenever we drink 3 ounces of grape juice. You make your after blessing, and then Nirtzah, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, we sing all those famous songs, Chad Gadya, and Echad Miyodea, and Lashana Haba. You dance with your family, dance with yourself, dance with your gloves and your mask and sanitizer. Okay, enjoy your great achievement. And then the rest of the night, you can fall asleep on your table. Some people say Shir Shirim. Some people stay up talking about various parts of the Exodus. It's a really spiritually packed night. So any extra word or reflection or inspiration you can gather is more goodness into your neshama. So try to utilize it, but be aware that you have to do it again tomorrow also to save some energy. Okay? And that is basically a very shorthand overview of the Seder. Okay, I hope it was a little bit helpful. Do we have any questions?
You said something before about Eliyahu Hanavi being an angel. That doesn't make sense, because we're higher than angels. Angels are basically, what can I tell you, like programs. You start the program, it does what it has to do, and then it's finished. Like when Avram Avinu had his bris, 3 angels had to come down. Why not just one? Why one couldn't have done everything? One came to tell him that he was going to have a son, this time next year. One was going to save Lot, and one was going to destroy the 5 cities. So the thing is, we're much higher than angels. That's why I don't understand why you refer to him as an angel.
So the answer is, you are correct. We are higher than angels because we have free will.
Right.
We can move about the cabin, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Eliyahu Hanavi, during his lifetime, was a human. At a certain point, he rose up in flames, a chariot of flames, right? At that point, he took on this shape-shifting angel type of status.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes to us. He is an angel. That's just what he is. I don't mean to say that he's greater than us in terms of his ability to use free will. We are certainly on a high level on this night. We said all the angels are watching and silent while we do all the singing and talking.
Mm-hmm.
But he is, the reason he's coming is, first of all, he comes to every Seder just to be there. And also, it's a hope that he should be Mevaser HaGeulah. He should be announcing that the Mashiach is on his way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea of him coming. Not to show that he's greater. Like you said, humans have their advantages over angels.
Mm-hmm. So I figure a person who passed away is still in the Shama. An angel is, I don't know if an angel is even that. Yeah, they have their own status. He's more than just a deceased person. Eliyahu Hanavi is a very fascinating topic. In fact, I don't want to go too far afield. There's a whole discussion of, was his wife allowed to get remarried when he passed away, or when he lit up, in flames? Mhm.
So is he dead? Is he not dead? Eliyahu is a very enigmatic figure. But just to bring out, we're hoping for redemption. That's why we're inviting him into our door.
Okay.
I have a question. Can
Yeah.
is there any time that the Seder has to be minimum time or maximum? I mean, can it go on or someone finish early? Does it have to go, can it be before midnight?
So there's no maximum. I mean, there's no minimum. As long as you do everything you're supposed to, then you don't have to have it a certain amount of time, right? Fulfill your basic obligation of saying the story. You can finish in an hour theoretically, but it would be just try to. In terms of a maximum, so there are certain check marks you want to hit. There's something called chatzot, which is halachic midnight. I forgot. I think these days it's around 1:15. I didn't check exactly. I think a bulletin will go out with the exact time of chatzot. You want to, for sure, try to eat your matzah before that time.
It's the maximum.
To get to the matzah at least. Now, some people even want to try to eat the afikoman before chatzot, which is the last thing they're going to eat is the afikoman. They want to try that before chatzot as well. You could try to do that, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your Seder experience. I mean, certainly eating matzah before chatzot you should do. Just so people shouldn't get bored and hungry. But to finish your afikoman before chatzot, sometimes it's going to make everybody feel too rushed while they're eating. So try to balance whether you should do it or not. Okay, but those are basically the minimums. There's no minimum time. You should definitely eat the matzah before chatzot, and the afikoman you should try, but not at the expense of your